Yeah, Marvel Comics, Strange Tales, number 134, July 1965, 55 years ago this month. This is the backup story, Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts, Earth, Be My Battleground. At long last, after an occult journey through nameless dimensions, weary and sick at heart, Doctor Strange returns to his native world, realizing the time has come to face the evil Baron Mordo once more. So, this was written by Marvel's own living legend, Stan Lee, illustrated by Marvel's own unsung genius, Steve Ditko, who also did the primary story plotting. Lee just kind of filled out most of the dialogue, but the main essence of the story was Ditko's layout, and that's consistent across most of these Strange Tales, Doctor Strange stories. The entire issue was lettered by Marvel's own beaming pixie, Artie Simic. The cast consists of primarily the main characters that you'd expect in a Doctor Strange story. Dr. Stephen Strange, Clea from the Dark Dimension, who should be noted is actually not named until Strange Tales issue number 146. The Ancient One Yao makes an appearance, and of course, the primary two antagonists are Dormammu of the Dark Dimension and Baron Mordo. Hamir the Hermit makes a small cameo, but again, similar to Clea, he is not actually called by name until Strange Tales issue 141. Eternity, perhaps one of the most important entities referenced, is mentioned only in passing. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that later when we get to that point in the story. So Doctor Strange, following the conclusion of his previous fight with Shanzana, returns to Earth and unable to go to his home, his residence, because he finds Mordo's minions are staking it out. He finds a hotel and he places his physical form there. He then puts his ethereal form out and travels through the core of the earth to go and visit the Ancient One, who he knows to be not doing well and is in ill health. He shows up to visit the Ancient One, and his former master is actually now in a coma. And it's reported to Strange by Hamir, who again is not named. He's just a guest character. That the only thing that the Ancient One could say in his delirium, and he repeated it, was eternity. And so Strange goes to discover what eternity means. And as he's reviewing books in the library and looking for information, he makes a mistake. And he makes a mistake because he's just a mortal man. He's a mortal man at all these mystical cosmic powers. He's the master of the mystic arts, but he's still a fallible mortal man. And that's one of the important notes about Strange is Strange doesn't bumble about, but he makes mistakes just like anybody else does. And how he addresses those mistakes are perhaps one of the more interesting aspects of the Strange character, because it's not always consistent. He might make one mistake and then follow that up with a poor choice. So it's a little bit of more character depth than you see in a lot of the Marvel characters from this era. To compare it to the previous story, The Thing and Johnny Storm don't really make any mistakes. They just kind of flow through the story. The Doctor Strange tales are a little bit more based in reality, and the characters make positive and negative choices that reflect on both them and the characters around them. So Strange now has been located by Mordo's minions. They immediately notify Mordo, and Baron Mordo then transitions himself to the ethereal and goes to chase after Strange to engage him in this grand conflict and hopefully kill him. But he is also being aided by Dormammu, and Dormammu is giving him power so that he is easily able to defeat Strange. And the reason Dormammu is giving him power is because Dormammu wants Strange removed. So once, to avoid being held to the vow that Strange forced him to make in Strange Tales 127. And that vow is to not invade the Earth and conquer it and make it part of the Dark Dimension, as Dormammu has done with so many other dimensions and realms. As this conflict starts and Baron Mordo is chasing Strange, Dormammu watches from his throne in the Dark Dimension. And Mordo must triumph this time. He must have Strange dead. And Clea overhears this, and Clea has befriended Strange in some of the prior adventures in the Dark Dimension. And she makes the decision that she's going to help her mortal friend. So as Clea walks through the Dark Dimension, she takes a device that is mystical in nature and goes to do the only thing that she knows she can do to help, and that is to release the mindless ones. And she is going to use this device to break down the barrier that Dormammu has encased them in a corner of the dark dimension. But who, you might ask, are the mindless ones of the dark dimension? The mindless ones were given form by Platoka as an army to slow down his enemies. Beings of unimaginable power and unstoppable destruction. And when Dormammu conquered Plakta's dimension, they invaded the dark dimension and rained chaos until Dormammu was able to use almost all of his power to enclose them within a prison. And these are the very creatures that Clea is going to release. And she breaks down the wall, and the mindless ones attack. And instantly, Mordo's power from Dormammu is severed, and now he must face Strange with just his minions' assistance and not the power boost given to him by Dormammu. And now Strange and Mordo are at least slightly on equal footing as Dormammu turns his attentions towards his own realm to fight away the mindless one's attack. So Dormammu uses his immense power to slowly force and subjugate the mindless ones back into a corner of the dark dimension, and Clea begins to realize that her actions may have consequences beyond that which she had ever dreamed. As Dormammu fights in the dark dimension for his very throne against the mindless ones, Strange sees only one option, and he takes the opportunity to exploit and rises up through the sky, through the atmosphere, across the solar system, directly towards the sun, in his hope that the radiation that's generated by the sun disrupts their power and puts them on equal footing, or it drives them away. And as as Mordo and his minions follow, the minions first peel off, and then Mordo, even though he's encompassed with desire to destroy Strange, realizes that Strange must have some trick up his sleeve to survive this, and he even turns away. And you get these beautiful panels that harken back to what I spoke about before in the previous story, with the reds and the yellows and these beautiful ethereal sketches almost of their beings, their spirit beings, in the pure white with just that gorgeous line work. And you get that real stark contrast that Ditko used again in the mid-'70s when he was doing his own books. The Underground Mr. A series, for example, has a lot of this influence in it, and you'll see that later. But you also see this being replicated across several other artists because Ditko was the unsung genius of Marvel, and at this time was at the top of his game. So as we return to the story, Dormammu has now erected a new barrier and confines the mindless ones again to their trap in the corner of the dark dimension and seals them back. And meanwhile, Mordo has returned to Earth and returned to his mortal being and is contacted by Dormammu and says, "Is Strange destroyed?" And Mordo, no, he has failed Dormammu yet again. And he is ordered by Dormammu to continue to harass, to follow, to hound him, give him no rest. He needs Strange destroyed, for Dormammu wants one thing above all others at this point. He wants Strange dead so that he can conquer Earth and make it part of the dark dimension. It's become personal for Dormammu. And you have this excellent parallel of the two characters of Strange and Dormammu. Dormammu sits upon the throne at the end of the book, regaining his power, dreaming of conquering the Earth, but he's also vexed by who would betray him, and eventually that will lead him back to Clea in another story. While at the same time, Strange returns to his physical form in the hotel room from the beginning and sets out to find out what the riddle of the Ancient One's words were when he said eternity, and how can eternity save the Ancient One from his current state. And that, my friends, is the end of a simple 12-page story by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko that has more depth than almost anything that you'll find in 28 to 32 pages on the shelf today. It's a reminder to writers on what can be done with just a few pages. It's a reminder to artists how simple panel breakdowns sometimes can expand more on a story than any kind of splash page or gorgeous artwork. Comic book is my next review will be G.I. Joe Special Missions, #1 from October 1986. Please ring the bell, share the link out, and subscribe. I am Aldous on the Farm. Thank you for watching.